Amelia Earhart set off to fly around the world and was never seen again, unless a lost photograph proves otherwise. A logger in Arizona claims he was taken aboard a UFO and returned days later, and an Australian man disappeared for 20 years, only to reappear with no memory of his past life. These are more disturbing cases of people who vanished and returned from another reality. Amelia Earhart's disappearance is one of the most famous unsolved mysteries of all time. In 1937, she set off on a mission to become the first woman to fly around the world. But on July 2nd, her plane vanished somewhere over the Pacific Ocean. The last radio transmission from her reported she was running low on fuel near Howland Island, and then nothing. The massive search that followed turned up nothing, and Earhart and her navigator Fred Noonan were declared lost at sea. That's the official story, but over the years, people have reported strange sightings and theories that suggest she might not have died in a crash. Some claim she was captured by the Japanese and held as a prisoner of war. Others believe she assumed a new identity and lived out her days in secrecy. Some claim to have actually spotted her with their own eyes. And in 2017, a supposed long-lost photograph surfaced from US military archives and was shared online. Some said there was a woman looking a lot like Earhart and a man who could be Noonan on a dock in the Marshall Islands. In Sydney, Australia, 1987, Gabriel Nagy went out to run errands like any normal day. He even called his wife Pamela, saying that he'd be home for lunch, but he never showed up. Pamela called the police, and soon after, a disturbing discovery was made. Gabriel's car was found burned out on the side of the road, and there was no sign of Gabriel himself. There was a massive search, but the case quickly went cold. That is, until 2 weeks later, when police discovered someone had withdrawn money from Gabriel's account over 100 miles away. But after that, the trail went dead again for 20 years. Right before Gabriel was about to be declared legally dead, one final search by a determined constable led to a shocking discovery. A man in Mackay had recently undergone surgery. His name was Ron Saunders, but hospital records showed that he also went by Gabriel Nagy. When authorities contacted him, he told them that he had barely remembered the last 2 decades. He'd been living on the streets, doing odd jobs with only fragments of memory from his past life. Doctors suspected that he'd suffered severe head trauma in the accident that burned out his car, leading to a rare case of amnesia. But something didn't quite add up. If he still knew his name, why hadn't he tried to find his family? Why not contact the police? Well, whatever the answer, the family was reunited in the end. What would you do if you realized your work could be used for something catastrophic? In the case of Italian physicist Ettore Majorana, he might have chosen to vanish. In 1938, Majorana, a brilliant scientist working on cutting-edge atomic research, boarded a ship from Palermo to Naples, but when the ship arrived, he was nowhere to be found. Witnesses confirmed that he'd gotten on the boat, but no one saw him get off. There were no reports of foul play either, and the weather had been calm. For years, people wondered if he'd been kidnapped, killed, fled into hiding. It wasn't until 2011 that a new clue finally came about. A photograph taken in Argentina in the 50s of a man who looked exactly like Majorana. Facial recognition experts found 10 points of similarity, meaning it was very likely him, but he barely looked like he'd aged. The leading theory is that Majorana, realizing his work on neutrinos could be used for nuclear weapons, deliberately disappeared. Some believe he may have even worked on early atomic research before realizing the implications and choosing to disappear and start over. But to this day, we still can't say for sure. On May 25th, 1985, police in Aurora, Colorado were called to a shopping mall about a woman in distress. She had no ID, no memory of who she was, and was carrying only an empty notepad and a car key. She was taken to a hospital where she spent 4 months trying to piece together her past, even reaching out to local news outlets for help, but nothing turned up. With no answers, she decided to start fresh. She changed her name to Jane D and moved to Alaska, where she built a whole new life, marrying, having 2 sets of twins, and settling down. 12 years passed, and that's when a co-worker of hers happened to see a news broadcast from Seattle about a missing woman named Jody Roberts. The photo was unmistakable. Jane D was Jody Roberts. an investigative journalist who had disappeared from Washington State in 1985. But what happened? How had she completely forgotten who she was? Long-term amnesia this severe is usually caused by extreme trauma or an epileptic event. Roberts had no history of epilepsy, and before vanishing, she'd emptied her bank account and taken her cats to a shelter. It looked like she'd planned to disappear, but to this day, the truth's never come out. She still goes by Jane D and is intensely private a person, not interested in speaking to the press. She has no social media. Does make you wonder though, if something happened, something to do with her journalism job that made her feel the need to get away. A man named Russ Kellett from North Yorkshire, England, came out with some pretty wild claims a few years back, and when various news sites told his story online, some people just memed the hell out of him, others were absolutely giddy. The story is pretty insane, but it is also pretty entertaining, and I'll just say, I'd love it to be real. So Kellett says that he's been taken by aliens at least 60 times. That's 60. Starting when he was just a boy. He describes waking up in a strange tunnel-like space, then finding himself on an operating table surrounded by towering Dracula-like beings who pumped a mysterious liquid into his body, supposedly turning him into a super soldier. For over 30 years, Kellett insists he's been part of an alien military force fighting against a race known as the Dragos, massive reptilian creatures with dragon-like heads. He says time moves differently in this war, with 4 hours on Earth equaling 4 years on distant planets, and that he's been battling not just in space, but here on Earth too, in places like the UK, other parts of Europe and South America. He even claims to have been transported through time, using a strange glass sphere inside a room with a chessboard patterned floor, sent to fight in conflicts across the universe. And I will just leave it at that.
In 2008, a woman named Lorena Garcia from Spain woke up and immediately felt something was off. At first, it was little things. Her bed sheets were different, her pajamas weren't the ones she remembered putting on the night before. Confused, she chalked it up to grogginess and just got ready for work. But when she got to the office, the weirdness escalated. She'd been working at the same place for 20 years, but when she arrived, she realized she didn't work in the same department anymore. She was listed under a completely different role, one she swore she'd never been assigned. Her boss, her coworkers, the whole structure was different, but it got worse. She reached out to her ex-boyfriend, who she'd broken up with months earlier, only to find out that they'd never broken up at all. According to him, they were still together. The man she had been dating, who she'd just seen a few days ago, was nowhere to be found. His number didn't even work. It was like he never existed. Lorena genuinely believed she'd woken up in a different version of reality, one nearly identical to her own, but with very key differences. She went to doctors, psychologists, everyone she could think of trying to explain what happened, but no one had an answer. She was healthy, her memory was sharp, yet her life didn't match her memories. And to this day, Lorena insists that she's from somewhere else, that she somehow crossed into a parallel dimension and has been stuck here ever since. In May of 1972, 4 girls from Southern Utah University were driving home after a rodeo when they took a shortcut through Gadianton Canyon, near the Utah-Nevada border. Around 10 p.m., the road beneath them changed from black asphalt to smooth white cement. The desert landscape gave way to unfamiliar grain fields and towering pines, not at all what they expected in southern Utah. Thinking they were lost, they turned around. Then they spotted a small roadside tavern and pulled over to ask for directions. Before anyone could get out, one of the girls screamed. Heading towards them were 4 strange egg-shaped vehicles with tricycle-style wheels and glowing lights. The girls, completely panicked, jumped back in the car and tore off through the canyon. As suddenly as it started, the strange scenery disappeared and the road returned to normal. They eventually crashed into a creek, damaging her car and flattening 3 tires. At dawn, they hiked to the highway and flagged down a trooper named Victoria Lindquist, who was shocked and confused to find that their tire tracks ended abruptly 600 feet into the desert. And despite being found miles from the road, no one could explain how they got there. One hubcap was also missing, which was never found. Back in the 1800s, there was a man named William Cantello, an eccentric British inventor obsessed with creating a rapid-fire automatic weapon. After years of work, he told his family he was heading to the market to sell his invention, and he never came back home. Roughly 20 years later, an American inventor named Hiram Maxim rose to fame with, you guessed it, a rapid-fire automatic firearm. Maxim also looked strikingly similar to Cantello, so much so that Cantello's own children were convinced he was their father. The resemblance became such a nuisance that Maxim addressed it in his autobiography, claiming someone had been impersonating him. Now, that may have been the case. It was just a coincidence that he not only looked just like another man, but also took up the same vocation. But some believe Cantello faked his disappearance and took on a new identity, or that Cantello and Maxim were the same person from two different realities, and at some point they switched places, leaving both men stuck in the wrong timeline. This has to be one of the strangest missing persons cases that I have ever heard. In 1763, in a quiet English town of Shepton Mallet, a man named Owen Parfitt vanished without a trace. He was old, frail, and paralyzed. He couldn't walk, couldn't dress himself, he barely moved. Locals say he was a former sailor with a shady past, but by the time this story takes place, he was basically bedridden. Well, one warm evening, Owen was sitting outside his sister's cottage, propped in a chair enjoying the breeze. His sister and a neighbor helped him outside, then they went inside for a bit. They claimed they were gone maybe 15 minutes, and when they came back, the chair was there, still facing the road, but Owen was gone. Now, this wasn't a busy area. It wasn't like someone could sneak up, lift a full-grown man who couldn't walk, and then vanish without making a sound, but it seemed like that's exactly what happened. People searched the fields, wells, nearby roads. Nothing. Days passed, then weeks. Rumors spread. Some started to wonder if he'd just been faking the paralysis for years before finally deciding to... what? Wander off into the wilderness alone? I don't know. It's not a good option. The theories? I don't know. I've got no new ones. In 1961, a girl named Terry Jo Duperalt went on what was supposed to be a dream family vacation, a week-long cruise on a rented sailboat in the Bahamas. But just a few days in, everything went horribly wrong. Terry Jo woke up one night to the sound of footsteps and her brother screaming. When she went topside, she found the deck covered in blood. Her mother and brother were dead. The captain, Julian Harvey, was the only adult left standing, and when he saw her, he didn't say a word, he just stared. She went back below deck, terrified. Minutes later, water started flooding in. The boat was sinking. She escaped onto a small floaty and drifted alone for nearly 4 days under the scorching sun. Dehydrated, sunburned, and half-conscious, she was eventually rescued by a Greek freighter. The fact that she survived at all was almost a miracle. Captain Harvey was rescued days earlier in a lifeboat and told authorities that the boat sank in a freak accident. He said that everyone else was lost at sea, but when he found out Terry Jo survived, he took his own life immediately. She never saw him kill her family, but everyone believes that that is exactly what happened, probably for insurance money. Still, there are holes in the story, and what Terry Jo saw that night, she never fully talked about. Some say she blocked it all out, others think something even darker went down. Till this day, though, the case has never really been solved. There is a book about this, if you're interested. I think it's called like Orphan Lost at Sea or something like that. And also, if you're a fan of the podcast MFM, if you know, you know, in one of their recap episodes that they're doing right now, the rewinds, they just did this one like a few weeks ago, so go listen to that, read the book. The story's crazy, you guys, that's just crazy. This little girl's just lost at sea, then she's found, and everything was okay for her. Then that's the important part of the story. Now, this first case is very, very strange. In 1880, a farmer named David Lang reportedly vanished into thin air while walking across a field on his property near Gallatin, Tennessee. There were multiple witnesses, including his wife, his 2 children, and 2 visitors arriving in a horse-drawn buggy. They said Lang was mid-step when he literally just disappeared. There was no flash of light, he hadn't fallen or gone behind a tree, he was there 1 second, and then he wasn't. The group ran to where he'd been standing, expecting to find a sinkhole or some kind of trap in the ground, but the earth was solid. They searched the area for days. Neighbors joined in, but no sign of Lang was ever found. The only thing that changed was the grass where he had vanished. It turned sort of like it decayed. It turned yellow and brittle, and for years afterward, nothing would grow there. Then, months later, Lang returned. Sort of. His daughter was playing in a field looking for four-leafed clovers, and that's when she heard it. A voice that sounded a lot like her father, calling for help. It was faint, like it was coming from underground or from behind a wall. It happened more than once, but each time they checked, there was still nothing. Eventually, even the voice stopped. The story was pretty well known at the time. It showed up in the newspaper, and the names, place, and details were consistent with public records. Was it fabricated? Maybe, but everyone there that day remained adamant about what they saw. In 2006, Carol Chase McKelney was driving through Riverside County, California, on her way home from a dog show. As she passed through her old hometown of Riverside, she figured she'd take a quick detour to see the neighborhood she grew up in. It had been years since she visited, and she was curious to see how much it had changed. Except, it wasn't her town. The street names were right, the general layout looked familiar, but her childhood home was completely gone, and so were all of the houses around it. The neighborhood had totally changed, like it had been wiped out and replaced with strange, unfamiliar buildings. She went to look for her grandmother's house. Gone too. Her old school was nowhere to be found. Even the cemetery where several family members were buried didn't look the same. The graves were different, and the whole place just felt wrong, like a dream version of her hometown. Completely shook, she got out of there, and it wasn't until years later that she felt the courage to come back. But this time, everything was normal. Her grandmother's house was there, her childhood home too, the school, everything was just like it always had been. So, what happened? Carol was completely sober, not tired, not on medication. She knew what she saw and what she didn't see. She swore up and down that for a few strange hours, she stepped into some alternate version of her hometown, a place almost like hers, but not quite. In 1978, 23-year-old Stephen Kubacki was a college student studying German at Hope College in Michigan. One February afternoon, he went cross-country skiing near Lake Michigan and never came back. The next day, his skis and backpack were found near the edge of the frozen lake. There were footprints leading out onto the ice, and then nothing. Search and rescue teams looked for weeks, but no trace of him was ever found. Everyone assumed the same thing, that he had fallen through the ice and died. Except, 15 months later, he showed up. Stephen woke up on a grassy hill in a field in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, over 700 miles away from where he disappeared. He was wearing clothes he didn't recognize, with a satchel full of maps he didn't remember collecting. He had a t-shirt from a marathon in Wisconsin, which he didn't recall running, and his last memory was being on the ice. He walked to his aunt's house nearby, and from there eventually reconnected with his parents. Nobody had seen or heard from him in a year and 3 months, but all things considered, he looked healthy. He was just confused like everybody else. When asked what happened, Stephen said he had no idea. He didn't remember anything. It was like someone had hit a reset button on his brain. To this day, he still doesn't talk much about it, and after the incident, he went back to school, earned a degree, and eventually became a clinical psychologist, which is kind of wild considering he's got one of the strangest unsolved disappearance stories on record. But I guess also maybe that makes him the perfect person for the job, you know? In March of 2017, Bruno Borges, a 24-year-old psychology student from Brazil, vanished without a trace. His family had last seen him at their home in Rio Branco, and when they realized he hadn't taken his phone, wallet, or anything useful for a getaway, they went into his locked bedroom. And that is when things got really strange. The entire room had been turned into some kind of cryptic research lab. The furniture was gone, replaced with a giant statue of a 16th century philosopher who believed in infinite worlds and extraterrestrials. There were also pages and pages of handwritten text covering the walls, floor to ceiling. Over 14 books worth written in a bizarre code nobody could read. Bruno's family had no idea any of this was going on. He'd apparently been working on it in secret for months. When news about his disappearance came out, internet sleuths obsessed over his case. His encrypted writings were eventually partially decoded. They talked about personal evolution, contact with higher beings, and preparing humanity for something bigger. But still, no one knew where he went. But after 5 months of silence, Bruno showed up back home, barefoot. He wouldn't say much about where he'd been, only that he'd been working on his ideas. His family and police said he was in good health, mentally stable, and not on any substances. He didn't really give interviews, and most of the public still doesn't know why he left or what exactly he was trying to do. In 1935, British Royal Air Force officer Victor Goddard was flying a biplane over an abandoned airfield near Edinburgh, Scotland. I think that's how you say it, and everyone in the comments is gonna be like, that's not how you say it. Well, I'm not Scottish, so I don't know what you want me to do. The place was falling apart, overgrown with weeds, buildings crumbling, not a soul in sight. A few days later, he flew the same route again, but this time, something was off. As he approached the airfield, a sudden storm hit. Thick, swirling clouds, heavy rain, turbulence. Then, just as fast, the sky cleared. Everything looked brighter. Unnaturally so. The airfield below was no longer abandoned, the buildings were intact, freshly painted, planes were on the ground, yellow ones, which wasn't the standard RAF color at the time, and mechanics in blue overalls were moving around, working on them. None of this made sense in 1935. The colors, the uniforms, the specific model of aircraft he saw, they weren't part of the Air Force yet. When he told people what he'd seen, they thought he was just confused or mistaken. But a few years later, during World War II, that same airfield was brought back to life. It was restored, the planes were painted yellow, and the mechanics wore blue coveralls, just like Goddard had described. It was as if he had seen the future. No one could explain it then, and no one really can now. And Goddard wasn't some nut, he was an air marshal. Dead serious, no nonsense, and he swore up and down till his death that this actually happened. In our number 6 spot today, we have Amelia Earhart. Amelia Earhart was an author and a pilot in the 1920s and 30s. She broke records by being the first female aviator to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean, and she also played a huge role in the formation of the 99s, which is an organization for female pilots. In 1936, Amelia started planning her around-the-world flight, and she even had an entire plane built with her specific modifications, such as additional fuel tanks. There were 2 attempts at the world flight, the first one obviously being unsuccessful, but the second was catastrophic. Amelia was flying with navigator Fred Noonan when they lost contact with anyone on the ground. What's crazy about this is that they know virtually everything that happened on that flight until those final moments when everything became a mystery. They have never been able to find the plane, or Amelia, or Fred. Some theories as to what happened are that the plane ran out of fuel and crashed into the ocean and sank, where some have suggested that maybe they made it to a nearby island but were found and killed for some reason, but the truth is that no one really knows for sure. In our number 5 spot today, we have Charles Ashmore. In 1878, Charles Ashmore was just 16 years old when he left the house on a November evening to grab some water from the well. His family rightfully became worried when he didn't return right away, and his father and sister promptly went out searching for him with a lantern to light their way. Because of the time of year, his footsteps were visible in the light layer of freshly fallen snow, but here's where things get weird. About halfway to the well, Charles' footprints just abruptly stop. There was no sign of a change of direction, a struggle, any jumping or sliding. They just stopped as if he had simply vanished. Of course, his father and sister rushed to make sure he hadn't fallen down the well, but it was so covered in ice that there was no way. Despite their best searches, they were never able to find either Charles or any clues of what may have happened. But things get even stranger. 4 days after his disappearance, Charles' mother was out searching for him when she heard his voice calling for her. She frantically searched around, and despite hearing his voice clearly, she couldn't see him at all. From that day, more friends and family members also reported having this same sort of experience. As time went on, the calls grew fainter and fainter, as if he was calling to them from a farther distance, and eventually by summer, the calls had stopped entirely. Charles' disappearance still remains a mystery to this day. In our number 4 spot today, we have Bruce Campbell. On April 14th, 1959, Bruce Campbell was sleeping next to his wife in a motel that they were staying at. The couple was on a trip from their hometown in Massachusetts across the country to visit their son. The couple stopped at a motel in Jacksonville, Illinois, which was meant to be their only overnight stop, but unfortunately things took a very dark turn on this night. Bruce's wife awoke a few times in the middle of the night. The first time she found everything to be normal as her husband was asleep beside her, but the final time she woke up, Bruce was nowhere to be found. All of his belongings, including his wallet, his car, his clothing, aside from the bright green pajamas he had gone to bed in, it was all in the motel. The only thing missing was Bruce. Very sadly, this was the last time Bruce was ever seen, and there has since been no explanations of what happened to him and no trace that might lead to an answer. It is exceptionally strange for something like this to happen, and for all of these years to go by with no leads, no witnesses, and really nothing to go on. Hopefully one day we do get some answers as to what happened to Bruce, because it certainly is weird for a man to just vanish into thin air like that. In our number 3 spot today, we have Barbara Bollick. On July 18th, 2007, Barbara and a friend named Jim went for a hike in the Bitterroot Mountains of Montana. Barbara was an experienced hiker and was carrying a small black bag with some essential items as well as a pistol for safety at this time. The pair headed to an overlook to stop for a snack, and Jim stopped to look out at a scenic view for a moment with Barbara about 20 feet away from him, but when he looked back, she was gone. Not only was she an experienced hiker, but she was also familiar with the area, so it's seemingly unlikely that she would have gotten lost, not to mention the extensive search efforts that took place almost immediately after. Also, the fact that she had a weapon with her is important. While it is possible that if someone else is the cause for her disappearance and could have unarmed her, it is strange to think that she was so near to her friend and he didn't seem to hear a thing. Jim was very willing to cooperate with investigators, so he hasn't been considered a suspect throughout the investigation. There were 2 other men with dogs in the area who have not been identified, but they also aren't believed to be suspects, just possible witnesses. Barbara's husband also explained that she was afraid of heights, so she wouldn't have ventured near the precipice or off the trail. It is still unclear what exactly happened to Barbara and where she went, and for all intents and purposes, it appears as though she just simply vanished. In our number 2 spot today, we have D.B. Cooper. The classic case of D.B. Cooper is a well-known one, and one that I actually discussed in my first ever video here on Most Amazing Top 10, but how fitting to be on this list, because what the heck happened to him and where the heck did he go? On November 24th, 1971, a man who said his name was Dan Cooper boarded a flight from Portland to Seattle. Once the plane was in the air, Cooper handed a note to the flight attendant, who dropped it into her purse without even opening it. Cooper leaned over and whispered, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Which is probably the number 1 thing on the list of the top 10 things no flight attendant ever wants to hear. After showing her the bomb, he began to list his demands, which were $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck standing by in Seattle to refuel the plane for when they arrived. At 5:39 p.m., the aircraft landed at the Seattle-Tacoma airport. After receiving the items he had requested, Cooper ordered all the passengers and some of the flight attendants to leave the plane. The plane then took off again, and when it landed in Reno, Nevada, Cooper wasn't on it. The search for Cooper was one of the most extensive in the US history, but he has never been located, and no one knows who he really was or what happened to him after this whole ordeal. Maybe DB knew something we all don't and he vanished into another universe? If so, why did he have to hijack a plane to do so? It truly is one of our biggest mysteries that may never get solved. In our number 1 spot today, we have James Tetford. James was born sometime around 1844, and while not much is known about his early life, the story I'm here to tell you today starts in the 1940s. James and his young wife Pearl were living in Fletcher in Franklin County, Vermont, and things began to get strange when James was returning home from his World War II military service. Well, actually, by the time he returned home, he found that Pearl had vanished and that their home had been left abandoned. There was no signs of where she might have gone, and no one in the family had any more information. Surprisingly, however, this is not the disappearance we are here to talk about. Just a few years later, in 1949, James was on a bus heading home from a trip where he was seeing family. There were around 14 other passengers on the bus who all confirmed seeing James aboard, as well as multiple more people who confirmed seeing him board the bus. Also, those on the bus testified to seeing him remain on the bus during the bus's second last stop before arriving at his destination. This all means that somewhere between the second last stop and the last stop, James disappeared and no one ever saw him leave the bus. All of his belongings were still on board, and he even left a local bus timetable open on his empty seat. This is another one of those disappearances that simply just don't add up. How could this possibly happen? With all of these witnesses, you'd think that someone would have seen something, right? Unfortunately, this was the last time James was ever seen or heard from. Again, like I mentioned at the beginning of this list, these are of course real people who disappeared, and including them on this list was not to make light of any of their disappearances, but rather to discuss the extenuating and strange circumstances that surround each one. In our number 10 spot today, we have Hale Boggs. We have all heard of the Bermuda Triangle, but have you heard of the Alaskan Triangle? Since 1988, apparently more than 16,000 people have vanished in the Alaskan Triangle, most of them without a trace. This triangle is responsible for disappearances at twice the rate of the national average, so it only seems reasonable that we talk about at least one of those cases today, and that is the case of US House Majority Leader Hale Boggs. On October 16, 1972, Thomas Hale Boggs Jr., along with an Alaska congressman and 2 other passengers, as well as the pilot of course, were flying from Anchorage to Juneau when their flight suddenly vanished. The disappearance of the plane caused one of the country's largest search and rescue missions ever, which involved 40 military aircrafts, 50 civilian planes, and a 39-day search that expanded 32,000 square miles. Despite this, there was never any kind of sign found. No wreckage from the plane, not even debris, no human alive or otherwise was ever found. It was like they all completely vanished into thin air. Having people like this on this list is not to make light of the real people who disappeared under these kinds of mysterious circumstances, but rather to bring attention to just how strange that really is. In our number 9 spot today, we have Ambrose Bierce. This story is particularly interesting because of the fact that Ambrose wrote a story called The Unfinished Race, which was about a mysterious and seemingly impossible disappearance, only to disappear later himself. In October of 1913, Ambrose was 71 years old, and he left Washington, D.C. for a tour of his old Civil War battlefields. Little is known about what exactly happened from here, but rumor has it that he crossed the border into Mexico, which was in the midst of a revolution. It is apparently here that he witnessed the Battle of Terra Blanca. The last known communication he had with the world was a letter he wrote to a friend in which he said, "As to me, I leave here tomorrow for an unknown destination." After this, he seemingly vanished without a trace. There are many theories as to what may have really happened here and where Ambrose actually ended up, but his true fate is still a mystery even a century later. I do think it is a very weird coincidence for him to have written about a strange disappearance only to do the same himself later in life. Maybe Ambrose knew something that we don't? In our number 8 spot today, we have Gavin. This story is a little different and it comes from a Reddit user called Theus_Eus. They start off by explaining that in school they met a friend named Gavin. They became pretty good friends over their shared love of World of Warcraft. He also explains that Gavin was a pretty socially awkward kid but was also incredibly smart with an IQ apparently around 180. After time passed, the pair became best friends who would often go over to each other's houses to play games, watch YouTube, you know, things that best friends in school do. They carry on the story to say, "One day I decided to come over to his house uninvited. I just thought we were really good friends, so it was cool. So I knocked on his door and this older looking guy opened, around 40. He had a little bit of a gray hair and a beard. Now at first I assumed this was Gavin's dad because they looked eerily similar, but then I remembered that Gavin doesn't have a dad. I then assumed that he was a relative. I asked him if Gavin was home and he laughed and told me that he's Gavin. I found this a bit weird, but it could just be a coincidence or Gavin was simply named by his uncle. I told him that I'm looking for a 16-year-old Gavin, described him to the guy, and he started looking uneasy. After some hesitation he said Gavin was not home. I asked him when he was going to get home, didn't really go into questioning who he was, and he gave me a time after thinking for a few seconds. So then I came over at the given time and my friend 16-year-old Gavin opened the door. I told him that his relative was there. He told me that he has no relative with the same name as him, and he also told me that he was home at the time I came and met the 40-year-old. We both found this extremely weird and our only explanation is time travel. I still keep in touch with Gavin, who happens to be studying quantum mechanics. We still haven't told anyone this story. To be honest, I'm not sure if this one is a parallel universe story or a time travel story, but all I know is that something strange was definitely going on here, and that is why it had to be included on this list today. I'm just glad that the regular kid version of Gavin ended up coming back. In our number 7 spot today we have Orion Williamson. This story takes place a while ago in July of 1854 on a farm near Selma, Alabama that belonged to Orion Williamson. Orion and his wife and and child were sitting on their porch when Orion got up to go and bring the horses in from the pasture. His wife and child watched as he went out into the field, and even his neighbors on the far side of the field saw him and got a wave from him, but this was the last time he was ever seen. How could someone who is basically being watched by multiple people just vanish without a trace? Both his family and his neighbors searched the field trying to find any sign of what could have happened, or maybe a hole that he could have fallen into, but to no avail. In the days that followed, the field was covered with people and bloodhounds searching as well, but there was never any sign or trace that led to anyone being able to find out what exactly happened to Orion. Despite the time that has passed, his disappearance still remains a huge mystery with no evidence to go on.
In 1987, a little girl named Purnima Akaniak was born in Bakumana, Sri Lanka. She was like most kids, except for the fact that she kept talking about being crushed by a heap of iron. She'd also always tell her mother things like people who drive over others are bad, which is of course true, but it was odd that she seemed particularly focused on that specific thing, driving over someone. And when her mom got upset about a car accident that had happened one day, Purnima calmly told her not to worry because she had also died in a crash. She said a big vehicle hit her and she never made it to the hospital. Things got weirder when she started saying she used to make incense, and their name had used to be Jinadasa. She also described two types of incense, how she made them, and how she used to walk around with her hands behind her back, supervising workers. She also claimed she lived across the river from a temple, which was over 140 miles away from her actual home. When her family finally took her there, she started pointing out familiar places and recognized people by name. And man she used to be, who'd died in a car accident, he was real. His name was Janadasa Pereira, and he died in 1985, 2 years before Purnima was born, when a bus ran him over while he was selling incense on his bike. And to top it off, she had a birthmark exactly where Pereira's chest had been crushed. Since childhood, Jenny Cockle would have recurring dreams of being a woman named Mary Sutton who lived in Ireland, had several children, and died young in the 1930s. As she got older, Jenny became obsessed with finding out if Mary was real. She started piecing together what she remembered, names, locations, and the layout of Mary's old home. Eventually, she tracked down a town in Ireland that matched. She discovered that a woman named Mary Sutton had lived there and had died, leaving behind children. Jenny eventually reached out to them, now elderly, and met with them in person. And to their surprise, she knew all these intimate details about their lives, their personalities as kids, and even specific incidents from their childhood that had never been published or shared. One of the sons in particular became convinced that Jenny really was his mother reincarnated. He said she had the same mannerisms and emotional connection to them that Mary had. Imad Alawar was just under 2 years old when he started telling his parents about a life he had claimed to have lived in another village about 25 miles from where he was growing up in Lebanon. He gave names, described a yellow car he used to own, and spoke about specific relatives, neighbors, and his former job. His family wasn't all that worried at first, but when Imad suddenly ran to a stranger on the street one day and hugged the man as if he recognized him, and it turned out this person was actually from the town Imad had claimed he'd lived in his past life, well, this intrigued his parents. Eventually, they contacted Dr. Ian Stevenson, a psychiatrist who'd been studying cases of past life memories. Stevenson documented that Imad made 47 specific statements about his supposed past life. When Stevenson and the Elawar family visited the town, it turned out that 44 of those 47 statements matched up with the real-life story of a man named Ibrahim Bouncy, who died 5 years before Imad was born. Another important detail is that the child Imad would often talk about how thankful he was for being able to walk. Well, Ibrahim died around the age of 25 after spending a year in a sanatorium. He had tuberculosis and was confined to a bed during the final part of his life. Barbro Karlin was a Swedish writer and poet. When she was just 2 years old, though, she started telling her parents that she was Anne Frank. Her family wasn't religious, and she hadn't been taught anything about the Holocaust yet, but Barbro described details of Anne Frank's life that she shouldn't have known. What the secret annex looked like, how the rooms were arranged, and the names of the people who'd lived there. When her parents finally took her to Amsterdam at age 10, she led them straight to the building without a map or a guide. Once inside, she pointed out changes that had been made to the house since she had lived there. She also seemed terrified of men in uniforms, even if they were just policemen on the street. Barbo went on to become a well-known writer and stood by her memories well into adulthood. She said she remembered parts of her death, the fear of being taken, and a sense of injustice that followed her for years. Seme Tetsumus was born with a misshapen right ear, which his parents chalked up to a birth defect, but when he started talking, he claimed it was from being shot in the head in a past life. He'd said he'd been a man named Salim Fasli, a farmer from another village who'd been killed while working in his fields. He recognized people Salim had known, including his widow, and called her by name. He also gave names of Salim's kids and talked about private conversations and daily routines that no stranger would realistically know. Dr. Ian Stevenson, the same researcher who studied Ahmad Elawar, investigated Semi's case and found it pretty compelling. Salim had in fact been shot dead, and Semi's ear deformity was right where the bullet had entered. The way Semi talked about Salim's life was natural, like he was recalling memories instead of making things up. One of the eeriest parts was how Semi's personality was different from other kids in his village. He was more serious and cautious, traits Salim's family said matched the man that they had remembered. When James Leininger was just 2 years old, he started having violent nightmares about crashing in a plane. He'd wake up screaming about being stuck in a fire or yelling things like airplane crash and the little man can't get out. During the day, he started naming aircraft parts most toddlers wouldn't know existed, things like drop tanks and Corsairs. He also kept saying he'd flown off a ship called the Natoma and that his name had been James. His parents eventually looked into it and discovered that the USS Natoma Bay was a real World War II aircraft carrier. They found a pilot on its roster named James Huston Jr. who died in combat. The plane was shot down and exploded. James the toddler also named another pilot from that crew who was still alive at the time, and when they met, the child recognized him instantly. On top of that, James could recall specific events and details of battles that matched Navy records. His parents had never really talked to him about this stuff at home, and none of it was in any children's books. As he got older, the memories started to fade, but for a while, it seemed like this kid was actually remembering a past life. At 4 years old, Shanti Devi in India started insisting that she had another family in a different town. She told her parents she wasn't really their daughter, that her real name was Lugdi Devi, and she'd lived in Mathura, about 75 miles away. She said she died giving birth to a son and gave the full name of her husband, the town he lived in, what he looked like, and even the layout of their house. At first, everyone thought she was just making things up, but when they actually looked into it, her descriptions lined up. A man named Kedar Nath lived in Mathura, had a wife named Lugdi who died during childbirth, and had a son. When Shanti met him, she instantly recognized him and greeted him like she knew him. She also correctly pointed out places and people in towns she'd supposedly never seen. Word got around and the case became so well known that a commission was set up by order of Gandhi himself. They interviewed witnesses, retraced her claims, and found that almost everything she said had a real-world match. Cameron McCulley was a regular kid growing up in Glasgow, until around age 5 when he started talking non-stop about a place called the Isle of Barra. He claimed he used to live there in a white house by the sea with a black and white dog and a family that he really missed. He talked about planes landing on the beach, his old dad named Shane Robertson, and how his old life had ended when he, quote, fell through. His parents had never even mentioned Barra before, but Cameron was convinced. Eventually they took him to the island, and it turned out there really was a white house by the sea, just like he described. But I mean, whatever, right? A white house, it's not like there aren't any other white houses in the world. Well, this one belonged to a Robertson family, again, just like young Cameron had described. Cameron was walking around like he'd been there before, naming things and pointing out details that lined up with what he'd talked about before. There were no obvious signs of how he could have known any of this. And his memories seemed emotional, not just factual. It didn't seem like he was just repeating stuff. It was as if he was genuinely grieving a life he'd left behind.
Someone showed up at your house claiming to be you, and your family believed them. Redditor Pale Orange Sky posted that her younger sister swore she'd picked her up from school one day, drove her home, and even helped with her homework. The problem? Well, she was working a double shift that day. Her car was parked at her job, and she had proof. Time cards and surveillance. But her sister described the car perfectly, described her outfit, described conversations they'd supposedly had. Quote, "You told me to stay away from the old tree in the backyard," her sister said. Only she'd never said that before. Or at least, not in this universe. What's up with that old tree? I want to know why the parallel universe version was so concerned about the tree. Something mysterious. You get home and the door's unlocked. Someone's in the shower. It's you! A man named James from Missouri told his story to a paranormal podcast. He came home after a weekend trip and heard the water running. He assumed his roommate was home early, but when he opened the bathroom door, he froze. Why would he open the door when he thinks his roommate is in the shower? It's a creepy roommate. Anyways, the person in the shower had his tattoo, his build, his voice. They both screamed. The other James bolted through the back door and then vanished. When he told his roommate later, the roommate casually said, "Dude, I thought you were already here. I talked to you like an hour ago." What if one day everyone acted like you weren't you? In 2016, a woman named Marissa shared an incident in a thread about identity glitches. She walked into work and nobody recognized her. Her boss claimed they'd already spoken that morning. Her coffee was already at her desk. Someone had clocked in with her badge 20 minutes earlier. She checked the security footage and saw a woman who looked exactly like her, wearing the same clothes, walking into the office and doing everything that she normally did. The footage froze as the real Marissa walked in. Her double was never seen leaving. When your reflection moves before you do, run. A man in the UK posted on a lucid dreaming subreddit that he was brushing his teeth one morning when he noticed something was off. His reflection wasn't synced. It blinked a little too early, tilted its head before he did, and then it smiled. And he hadn't smiled. He turned around and ran out of the bathroom, nearly slipping. When he went back later, everything looked normal, except for one thing. The toothpaste cap was off, but he remembered screwing it back on. I guess the reflection didn't. Someone showed up at the DMV pretending to be you. Honestly, that's not so bad. They can wait in line for me. That's totally fine. In 2019, a man named Eric from Pennsylvania went to renew his passport and was told, "We already issued it yesterday." Confused, he checked, and sure enough, someone with his name, birth date, and even address had already picked it up. He asked for the security footage and saw someone who looked exactly like him down to a scar on his cheek, but Eric had been at work, logged into his company computer at the time. He reported it, but authorities never found the imposter or the passport. That's like crazy to think that your parallel universe doppelganger could come here and steal your identity. Would it even be a crime? I mean, technically, they are you. Sorry, I'm just like really having a moment. Like, guys, let's think about that for a second. Would they be jailed if they caught them? Let's say, yeah, they caught them. Would they be jailed for trying to steal your identity, even though it technically is their identity too? I don't know. Let me know down below. What if you met your double and they acted like you were the intruder? One of the most disturbing stories comes from a woman in Australia who shared her experience on a podcast called Somewhere Else. While staying at an Airbnb, she swore she saw someone walking into the living room from the hallway. A woman with her exact face and clothes. They locked eyes. The other version of her whispered, "You're not supposed to be here," and then apparently just disappeared into thin air. She packed up and left that night. When she checked the Airbnb listing later, it had been removed. No record of the host, no record of her stay. Even her confirmation email was gone. Doppelganger stories aren't just eerie. They challenge everything we think we know about identity, time, and maybe even reality itself. Whether they're signs of a multiverse, glitches in our simulation, or something stranger entirely, one thing's for sure, these stories are more than just spooky coincidences. They're warnings.
Chennai Chumale Wong was born in Thailand in 1967. When he was just 3 years old, he started saying he used to be a school teacher named Bua Kai. He claimed he'd been killed while riding his bicycle to work. His story got weirder when his family noticed he had two unusual birthmarks, one on the back of his head and another above his left eye. Well, Bua Kai was a real person who had died. And according to his autopsy report, the entry and exit wounds of the bullet that killed him matched up perfectly with Chennai's birthmarks. Chennai kept insisting he wanted to go home and would say the name of the village where he said he'd lived. Eventually his grandma took him there, and without hesitation he walked up to Bukkai's old house. He correctly identified the man's parents and described items that had been in the home years earlier. He also remembered details like the name of Kai's bicycle and how he used to teach math. This case takes a turn from creepy to downright chilling. So a 3-year-old boy in Golan Heights, a region between Syria and Israel, started telling his family he'd been killed in a past life. He said he died when he was attacked with an axe and was buried in a nearby field. Elders in the community followed him to the spot, where they dug up a human skeleton with a wound in the skull, right where the boy said the axe had struck. Not only that, but the boy claimed to remember the name of his killer. When they confronted the man, he allegedly confessed. The whole thing was documented by Dr. Eli Lash, a respected physician known for his public health work. He said the boy's memories were disturbingly detailed, right down to the type of axe used.
What would you do if you saw yourself walking out the door while you were still sitting at your desk? A Reddit user named Trigger Happy Greg, which we'll talk about that later, worked night shifts at a small call center. One evening around 2 a.m., his coworker looked up and said, "Didn't you just leave?" Confused, Greg replied, "What are you talking about? I've been sitting here." The coworker swore she saw Greg walk past her office and out the front door. Same hoodie, same walk, same everything. They even checked the security camera, and sure enough, there was Greg walking out. But Greg had never left, and the security footage glitched right as he hit the parking lot. Erased, like someone never meant for him to be seen. Imagine someone who looks exactly like you calling your dog by name and walking down your street like they live your life. A woman from Oregon shared a chilling story on a paranormal Facebook group. Her neighbor knocked on her door one evening, confused, and asked, "Why didn't you say hi earlier? I saw you walking Max." Only this woman had been inside all day. Max, her golden retriever, hadn't left the house. The neighbor was adamant, said she even waved and the woman waved back. Creeped out, she checked her doorbell cam and saw someone with her exact face walking Max past the house. But, conveniently, the footage froze just as the double turned to look at the camera. What if you called your own phone and someone answered? A man named Alex recounted this story about parallel universes. While looking for his missing phone, he used his partner's device to call it, and someone picked up. The voice on the other end said hello, but it was his voice. The same tone, same speech pattern. The voice said, "Don't come looking for me," and hung up. Later, Alex found his phone under the couch, completely dead. There was no missed calls, no records of an incoming call. It was as if whoever answered was using a different version of his phone. What if someone knocked at your door and you answered while you were still upstairs? This story comes from a Reddit user named Mirror Moments, who shared an experience from when she was a teenager. One afternoon, she was upstairs in her bedroom when her friend came over and rang the doorbell. Her mom wasn't home, so no one should have answered, but her friend said that someone did, and it was her. The other her opened the door, smiled, and said, "I'm busy, come back later," before shutting it quietly. The friend was so weirded out by the interaction that she texted her asking what was going on. That's when Mirror Moments ran downstairs in confusion, only to find the door still locked. Her friend was standing outside, pale and wide-eyed. She swore that it was her. The same hoodie, the same voice, the same smirk. It was her friend. She knows what her friend looks like. When they checked the security cam footage later, it glitched right at the time the door supposedly opened. No motion, no video, just static, almost like something or someone didn't want to be seen.
Eternal Flame Falls is a small waterfall in Chestnut Ridge Park in western New York. What makes this waterfall unique is that it has a natural gas leak at its base, which allows a small flame to burn right at the base of the waterfall. The flame is constant, has been burning for as long as people have known about it, making it a fascinating and somewhat surreal sight. The fact that fire and water are so close together, one being fueled by natural gas and the other rushing down a waterfall, it definitely gives it a mysterious, almost otherworldly vibe. There's a strong connection between the flame and the idea of portals to parallel universes because the flame seems to defy natural law. The fire burning in such close proximity to water could be seen as this symbol of two opposing forces existing in the same place. Some people believe that the flame could be a sign of energy leaking from another dimension or reality, making it a potential gateway for forces from another world. But whatever your view is on all that, it is just really cool looking. The Crooked Forest has to be one of the strangest forests on planet Earth. It's famous for its trees, which grow at these odd, almost unnatural angles. Most of the trees in the forest are bent in a distinct J shape, and it's unclear exactly why they grow this way. The odd appearance of the forest has led some to wonder if there's something more going on here than just a weird quirk in nature. Some think that the crookedness of these trees could be the result of magnetic anomalies, or even something more bizarre, like a tear in the fabric of space-time. The forest is relatively small, but the strange shape of the trees gives it a haunting atmosphere. It's easy to see why people think the Crooked Forest could be a gateway to another world or dimension. Salar de Uyuni in southwestern Bolivia is the world's largest salt flat, covering more than 4,000 square miles. First glance, it looks just like this vast, barren wasteland, but it doesn't take long to realize something just feels off about it. It stretches out to the horizon, creating an optical illusion where the sky and ground almost merge together. And when the salt flat is covered with a thin layer of water, it becomes this big, giant mirror, reflecting the sky so perfectly that it can feel like you're standing in the middle of the sky. At least that's what I've heard. I've never been there myself. Certainly looks like it from images though. It's surreal, and it's inspired some to speculate about its connection to parallel universes. The mirror effect especially is often described as looking like a doorway to another dimension. The flatness and emptiness of the place also gives it an almost timeless feel, as if time just doesn't exist in the same way it does in the rest of the world. Some people who have visited this site describe feeling a sense of being outside of normal reality, almost as if they were stepping into a place where the laws of physics don't apply. Mysterious region in Alaska, and it's got quite the reputation. People talk about strange things happening here, like UFO sightings and Bigfoot encounters, tons of Bigfoot encounters. But what really stands out is how many people go missing in the area. The rate of disappearances is nearly double the national average, which is pretty unsettling. Now, part of that is because it's a huge, wild, rugged place with some of the harshest weather on the planet. Even experienced explorers have to be super careful here. There are tons of reports of pilots, hikers, even whole groups disappearing without a trace. On top of that, there are stories of strange magnetic interferences in the area, compasses malfunctioning and making it nearly impossible to navigate. All of this makes the Alaskan Triangle a place full of mystery and danger. Are known for being pretty dangerous, but there's a lot of eerie legends tied to the place as well. Probably why it's called the Superstition Mountains. The area is full of deep canyons, steep drop-offs, rough terrain. It makes it a tough place to navigate even for experienced hikers. Over the years, more hikers have gone missing in these mountains than in any other range in the United States, about 5 a year. But it's not just the wild terrain that makes the place dangerous. The Superstition Mountains are full of legends, all of them ending in tragedy pretty much. Supposedly, there's treasure hidden somewhere here by a man who's become known as the Lost Dutchman. People have been trying to find this treasure for centuries, and many have died doing so. Probably the most gruesome part are the reports of bodies being found without heads. Sometimes the heads are found, just not anywhere close to the rest of the body. Cameron Park in Waco, Texas is known for being one of the creepiest forests in the state. It's got this mix of eerie legends and paranormal activity that gives it a real dark fairy tale kind of vibe. There's remnants of an old abandoned castle here, for example, said to have once been home to a witch. The story goes that an old hag used to live there, practicing dark magic and luring youngsters in to poison them. When the locals found out, they formed a mob and burned her house to the ground. Now her vengeful spirit is said to haunt the ruins, chasing away anyone who dares to get too close. Some say you can even hear the screams of her victims echoing through the forest at night. Another infamous part of the park is referred to as Jacob's Ladder, a massive steep set of stairs that leads through the forest. It's a tough climb, but once you make it to the top, you get some amazing views. The stairs, though, are said to be haunted by a malevolent spirit, said to grab at people's clothes and sometimes pull them down hard enough to tumble down the stairs to their death. It's a massive flat-top mountain sitting right where the borders of Venezuela, Brazil, and Guyana meet. It's part of a region known as the Tepuy, which is a collection of isolated flat-topped mountains that just don't look real, at least not like something you'd see here on Earth. Roraima itself is especially fascinating because it rises more than 9,000 feet above the surrounding jungle, and its sheer cliffs make it nearly impossible to climb from the sides. The top of the mountain is covered in mist most of the time, giving it this eerie, almost otherworldly look. As for what's on top, it's almost like an entirely different world. There are these unique species of plants and animals that don't exist anywhere else, and the area has a strange, almost magical feel to it. The isolated environment has led to all kinds of theories about it being a possible doorway to another universe. Some believe that the mountain could be some sort of portal, where the separation from the rest of the world creates a gateway to a parallel reality. Local indigenous tribes have their own legends about the mountain being a place where the gods live, and many have stories of strange events happening around it. Some explorers even report hearing strange noises while they're there. The Devil's Sea, or the Dragon's Triangle, is an area off the coast of Japan, south of Tokyo. It's often compared to the Bermuda Triangle, which is not a good thing. For decades, it's had a reputation for unexplained disappearances, strange weather patterns, and reports of unusual lights in the sky. One of the most famous stories here is the disappearance of the Japanese military vessel Kaio Maru No. 5 in the 50s. The ship, which was conducting research in the area, vanished without a trace, and no wreckage was ever found. There have been other reports of unexplained events too, including ships being found in the wrong locations, crew members mysteriously vanishing, and bizarre compass malfunctions. There's this idea that the Devil's Sea could be a place where time and space don't quite behave the way they should. The idea of a parallel universe or some sort of dimensional rift gets tossed around a lot when people discuss the area. Wycliffe Well is a tiny settlement in the Barkly region of the Northern Territory in Australia. It's about 380 miles north of Alice Springs, and it's known for one thing above all else: UFO sightings. The area only has a handful of permanent residents, but it's become pretty well known as a hotspot for strange activity. People from all over the world come here to visit the Wycliffe Well UFO Center, which displays local reports and stories of alien encounters. For decades, locals and visitors have reported seeing bright lights in the sky, strange flying objects, and mysterious unexplained events happening around the area. The town even calls itself the UFO capital of Australia, and there are signs along the road warning visitors of frequent UFO sightings. But why here? Why this tiny section of Australia? Some believe that there could be some sort of wormhole here, connecting the place to some distant part of space, or maybe even another dimension, with the UFOs acting as the vehicles that travel through them. Wycliffe Well is in the middle of nowhere, too, surrounded by vast desert. The isolation gives the place a certain eerie quality that makes it feel like a place where aliens could roam around undetected. Pyramid Lake in Nevada is a beautiful but eerie spot with a dark history. It's known for its dangerous reputation, and there are all sorts of legends tied to it. The most chilling of these comes from the local Paiute tribe, who speak of the water babies, angry spirits that pull people into the lake, and not for a swim, they kill them. The spirits are said to make these horrid crying and laughing sounds that echo off the lake in the late hours of the night. Over the years, many people have drowned in the lake, and because it's so deep, many of their bodies have never been found. But what's extra strange is the phenomenon of people disappearing in the lake only for their bodies to turn up miles away in Lake Tahoe, about 61 miles away. Hard not to wonder if there's something otherworldly going on in these waters.
Speaking of oddly shaped places to enjoy a nice hot meal served to you in a cardboard box, we have the plane-shaped McDonald's located in New Zealand. Well, it's not just plane-shaped, it's actually a decommissioned Douglas DC-3 aircraft, complete with an intact cockpit. While you can't actually order food from inside of the Big M emblem-adorned airliner, you can grab your food from the counters located in the more traditional restaurant next door, and then bring them over to enjoy an experience like never before. That's right, I'm talking about eating microwave food on an airplane. To be honest, I'm not quite sure how either airlines or fast food restaurants cook their food, but what I do know is that Douglas DC-3 has a fully refurbished interior, complete with big comfy red chairs and shiny metal tables, creating a dining experience like no other that can accommodate up to 20 patrons at a time. What's the coolest McDonald's you've ever been to? Let us know in the comments. Have you ever tried to go through a drive-thru without a car? Oh, yeah, me neither. Well, if you ever wanted to, this next location is the place to do it, as cars are strictly banned from this ski-through McDonald's located in Lidvallen Ski Resort, about 200 miles northwest of Stockholm in Sweden. Also known as McSki, the newly popular location has actually been around since about 1966, if you can believe it, and has been a staple for skiers and snowboarders alike. With McDonald's complete classic menu available for order, this pick-me-up pit stop is truly like no other, and as hitting the slopes can work up quite an appetite, I truly can't think of a better way to satisfy your hunger without cutting too much into your adrenaline-chasing chill time. McDonald's is best known for being a quick spot that doesn't break the bank. But have you ever heard of a McDonald's that was a bank? Well, if you haven't, you're about to. With one user on TripAdvisor referring to it as the classiest McDonald's in the world, this one-off variation is located in, bear with me, Kristiansand, Norway. While there is not much information of this particular franchise location to be found online, it is open to the public and boasts a classic McDonald's menu, as well as a few more items specific to McDonald's in Norway, such as the home-style juicy burger, pasta salad with chicken or ham, hot wings, oatmeal with raisins, the chicken premier burger, and something called a McToast. Because of its location, we of course have to assume that at one point many areas within the walls of what is now a cool place for a quick bite were strictly banned from the public, given that the restaurant once contained safes and vaults full of copious amounts of cash. Next on the list we have a McDonald's, an extremely popular mega capitalist McDonald's, laughably and ironically located directly outside the entrance to the Museum of Communism located in Czechia, Prague. Now, honestly, in this instance, I'm surprised it wasn't banned from ever being open there in the first place. But it seems the Prager people have quite the sense of humor, as there is an ad posted outside of the museum that reads, "Museum of Communism," above the casino, right next to the McDonald's. So I guess they really are above capitalism. The McBarge, as it was once known, is next on the list. This creepily eerie and now abandoned location was once the forefront of innovation for the franchise when the floating restaurant was opened in 1986. It was a place for sea dwellers and land lovers alike to indulge in what seems to be everyone's common ground: cheap food and good scenery. However, the magic of the marina-based Maiden didn't last long, as only 5 years after, in 1991, the new owner of the grounds forced the boat to depart from the docks, making it rather difficult to keep the business booming. Since the McBarge's departure from the McDocks of Vancouver, it has been anchored and abandoned just near British Columbia. Since then, many people have been going out to see this abandoned national treasure, and there has even been some public interest in refurbishing and reopening the restaurant as well. Believe it or not, New Mexico wasn't actually the first place to have a space-themed establishment. The OG extraterrestrial spacecraft turned restaurant was actually located in Alconbury, Cambridge in England, and was built in 1990 and converted into a McDonald's shortly after in 1993. But much like the McBarge, the adventure was short-lived, as it shut down just 7 years later in the year 2000. The UFO-inspired structure adorned with the golden arches we all know and love was, at the time, the definition of space-aged architecture. The restaurant showcased a computerized ordering system and a drive-thru that often queued all the way out into the main road. A former employee by the name of David Meredith described the restaurant as having a gloomy atmosphere, saying that although it was space age, the lights were dim, and whoever had crafted the structure, it seems, had forgotten to add windows. While this location is not necessarily banned, it is unable to be reached by the public, or anyone else for that matter, as it was sadly demolished in 2008 after having been abandoned since its closure just 8 years prior. And that brings us to our final location in the infamous Guantanamo Bay, an area best known for being home to the largest detention camp under the control of the United States and the United States military. Since 2002, roughly 780 detainees have been held at the center. However, in a report released in 2023, it seems that number has since dwindled to just 30 persons who are still being kept within its walls. To enter Guantanamo Bay would require area clearance and a special kind of government-issued passport. So you might be wondering, how did a McDonald's end up there, and why? Well, the only McDonald's in Cuba opened in 1986 and has since been a staple of home to the military personnel residing there while working for the US government. And as long as the US continues to exercise its jurisdiction and control over the Bay Area, I'm guessing it's here to stay. Now, while it's no secret that American soldiers tend to enjoy some McDonald's every now and then, it appears the prisoners living on the base might too, as there have been rumors of inmates being offered Happy Meals in exchange for their cooperation. Of course, this area is completely banned to members of the public, so don't be expecting to indulge in any Big Macs or Happy Meals the next time you hit up Cuba. McDonald's. You either love it or you don't, but like it or not, they are everywhere. It seems like you can't go far these days without passing by the golden arches of fast food royalty. But what if I told you that there are some McDonald's that are so far and so far out there, they appeared as though they belonged in a parallel universe. And some of them are even banned to the general public. First up is a sit-down and drive-through McDonald's located in Samoa, also known as the most remote McDonald's in the world, sitting at an astounding 770 miles, or about 4,600,000 feet from the next nearest franchise location. The restaurant, which is located inside a 150-year-old colonial mansion on the small island country, features a Makaiga meal that costs £38, about $65 Canadian, and consists of 2 Big Mac medium meals, 2 quarter-pounder small meals, 2 deluxe cheeseburgers, and 2 8-piece McNuggets. Honestly, not a bad deal. You might think it difficult to sustain the franchise on such a small island, but the reality is quite the opposite in fact. Locals and tourists alike rejoice in the little slice of processed heaven and have kept the business booming since its opening in 2000. The restaurant is also a notable hotspot for the island's rugby team, with players enjoying the fast food delights so much that they were actually banned from partaking in such delicacies while competing overseas, as their coach feared their inevitable overindulgence would ruin their chances at winning the World Cup. Next up, we have the Arizona Aqua Arts Beauty located in Sedona, Arizona. While it might not be banned, you just might miss it, as when the restaurant was constructed in 1993 just off of Route 98A, its existence was contingent on the fact that the restaurant blended seamlessly with the natural beauty of the 48th state. While at first this was a bit of a turnoff for developers, the collaboration with the state's city council and planning and zoning commissions actually turned out to be a quite lucrative one. The restaurant became yet another reason for tourists to make their way to the Sandy State, and those who were already there just had to check out this one-off, off-colored location and lay their eyes on the blue-green arches they had heard so much about before heading off on their next adventure. And that brings us to our next location, in New Mexico. Fun fact, while New Mexico is well known for being a hotbed for extraterrestrial action and activity, it is also home to one of the most out-of-this-world McDonald's locations known to man. And possibly others? In case you haven't guessed by now, this McDonald's was built in the shape of a giant, unidentified flying object, or extraterrestrial spaceship, if you will. The UFO-shaped McDonald's graced the sunny state of New Mexico around 2011 and quickly became one of the coolest locations to date and a huge tourist hotspot for Big Mac hoppers and alien enthusiasts alike. With its bright red lights and glowing golden arches, who knows what kind of creatures this thing attracts. Now, it might not be banned, but it does look like it has the opportunity to blast off into hyperspace, so if you were looking for an excuse to visit, Well, there it is.
Number 5. Nahanni National Park Reserve. Now this is a strange case. Over the decades, many unfortunate travelers and explorers have gone missing or they turned up dead and beheaded in the Nahanni Valley. Now the number of decapitated bodies found within the Nahanni Valley have earned it the nickname Valley of Headless Men. In 1917, Martin Jorgensen's body was discovered decapitated next to the remains of his cabin as it was burned to the ground. It is suspected that he struck gold in the vicinity as he wrote of it back home before ending up beheaded. Then in 1931, another body was found. This time it was that of Phil Powers. His charred remains were discovered in ashes of what were his cabin. The RCMP were quick to attribute his death to a faulty stovepipe, but their explanation was repeatedly debunked by various sources. Now many others simply disappeared without a trace in the remote wilderness of the valley. In 1928, one prospector named Angus Hall ventured ahead of his party and was never seen again. Another pair of prospectors, Joe Mulholland and Bill Ipper, disappeared in 1936. Now for many years they were searched for but were never found. The only thing discovered was their cabin, burnt down to the ground. Why are so many people going missing in this specific area, and why are their cabins being burnt down? Number 4. Mount Charleston in Humboldt-Toyabee National Forest. Larry Jeffrey disappeared near the peak of a 12,000-foot Mount Charleston in Humboldt-Toyabee National Forest. Now the search began immediately after the boy wandered away from his brothers, and within days the National Guard and a team of bloodhounds had joined the search. In a TV interview, David Paulies told reporter George Knapp that there were no predators afoot that day, and since the area they were in was pretty secluded, it's easy to rule out abduction by car. This boy just walked into oblivion, David said. Now when Jeffrey disappeared, he was wearing light clothing, and authorities were doubtful that he could survive the cold temperatures at night. Now searchers found and lost the trail a few times, and they discovered evidence that the boy had been eating insects and forged berries along the way. Overall, 1,000 people searched for 16 days but never found him. It appears that he just went poof, maybe into an alternate dimension. Perhaps. Number 3. Ozark National Park. In the 1940s, a girl named Catherine Van Alst went missing while camping at Ozark National Park with her family. She was barefoot and wearing only her swimsuit when she disappeared. Now searches were conducted high and low for the missing girl, but it wasn't until 6 days later that she was found. Now the catch, she was still barefoot, still in her swimsuit, and totally unharmed. She was alive. Now she'd also traveled over 30 miles and climbed 600 feet without getting a scratch on her. She wasn't even scared. Now no one, including her, has ever been able to explain it. Could she have gotten trapped in a portal and somehow made her way back to our world? That could be one explanation for sure. Number 2. Santa Fe National Forest. Santa Fe National Forest in New Mexico has bizarre wooden structures all throughout the forest. Now no one knows who made them or why. The structures range in size but have all been constructed out of fallen trees and limbs, with some reaching over 20 feet tall and dozens of feet in diameter. They don't seem to have a pattern as to their locations, they simply just appear. Now they do have a few things in common though. They resemble teepees, though no one can actually live inside them, and the Forest Service has no idea who is building them or why, but their response so far has been to dismantle any that are found. The destruction of these mystery structures is to eliminate the forest fire threat that they create. The Santa Fe National Park Service has issued a press release asking for any information about the mystery structures, and according to the release, these structures are prohibited under federal law and violators could face a fine up to $5,000 and possible imprisonment for 6 months. Now does this have to do with cults? Can these structures transport you to another dimension? I guess we'll have to see. And coming in at number 1 is Green Mountain National Forest. The Vermont State Police exists because of Paula Jean Weldon. Now Paula Weldon was a student at Vermont's Bennington College and was familiar with the Green Mountain National Forest to the east of her college town. Now according to Bennington Banner, Paula set off for the trail on December 1st, 1946, telling her roommate, "I'm off for a long walk," and she was wearing relatively light clothing. Now she apparently hitchhiked to the trail with local Louis Knapp, who gave a ride to a young woman matching her description. He dropped her off near the trail, and the last known person person to see her was a washman named Ernie Whiteman, who warned her about going into the cold landscape. Once it became clear that Paula had gone into the forest but hadn't left, a search was organized, but it was to no avail. Now, Paula was actually one of 6 people who were reported missing near Bennington from 1945 to 1950. Now, their still unsolved disappearances helped to earn the nickname of Bennington Triangle for the area. Coming in at number 10 is Yosemite National Park. With more than 750 miles of trail, Yosemite National Park is a vast unspoiled wilderness, making it a hiker's dream. But if someone disappears, sending a search team is a nightmare. Now, at the moment, there are 13 people still missing there, the disappearances ranging from 1972 to 2021. Now, one disappearance is the case of Michael Fiercy. He was an outdoorsman, so why did he get lost and never be found? We don't know. In 2005, he decided to hike solo through Yosemite National Park. He had once cracked an ankle at Yellowstone, having to crawl all the way out of the wilderness, so when the outdoorsman failed to return from his adventure after his permit expired and his family expected him home, they feared the worst. Now, the search for Fiercy was so massive that the United States Marines were involved. They found one thing belonged to him, his backpack. Now, it contained his map, water, and camera. Now, his friends and family were even more concerned at this point because they believed that Fiercy would never willingly leave his bag at any time during a hike. Now, unfortunately, in the 16 years that have passed, not another trace of Fiercy has been found. With someone so experienced, I find this disappearance to be suspicious. Number 9. Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Dennis Martin was on a camping trip at Great Smoky Mountains National Park with his family in the summer of 1969. Dennis and his brothers had planned a prank. They were going to hide separately in the bush and jump out on different sides of the campsite to scare their fathers. They did the prank, but they realized that Dennis was missing. Family, park rangers, and other hikers spread out to search for Dennis almost immediately, but he was nowhere to be found. That evening there was heavy rainfall, which is bad news when you're trying to track someone. The search for Dennis became the largest in National Park Service history. Dennis seemed to have disappeared completely, leaving no trace at all. Now, people's disappearances at national parks have prompted people to question how a map of missing persons in the US lines up with America's largest cave systems. Are these people disappearing and being taken to these caves by cave people, animals, or some sort of creature? And are the caves portals to parallel universes? Who knows? Number 8. San Bernardino National Forest. David Gonzalez went camping with his family in San Bernardino National Forest. At one point, he asked his mother if he could go get some cookies from the family car, but 40 minutes passed and his mother realized that David never returned, and the cookies he wanted to grab were still inside the car. Now, he was never found alive again. His death is viewed as one of the strange disappearances in national parks. A week after missing, his badly decomposed body was found only a mile away from where he went missing. Now, this area was already combed days prior, so this means that he must have been dropped there by someone or something. An autopsy revealed no trauma and no overt injury. He was just dead without any reason or clue as to why. Now, this is already baffling, but what makes the case of David so strange is not his disappearance alone, it's the way the local authorities and investigators seem to handle the case. The officials claim that David was dragged off by a mountain lion, despite no injuries that would suggest that be his fate. Nobody nearby heard David scream either. Now, David's parents had gone on record to say that they don't believe David got dragged off by a cougar. They believe that he was kidnapped and that he still may be alive somewhere and that the body wasn't his. Now, is this sounding exactly like Stranger Things to anyone else? Maybe he got sucked into the Upside Down with Will and is fighting against a Demogorgon. Number 7. Grand Canyon National Park. At least 56 people have been reported missing from Grand Canyon National Park since the beginning of 2018, and at least 6 people have been found dead. Now, this is despite the park not only being smaller, but seeing millions fewer visitors than many of the other 424 national park sites. While the park is beautiful, a New York Post investigation recently found it is also the deadliest national park in the country, with the most number of missing persons in the nation. On June 2nd, 2015, Morgan Heimer was working for Tour West, a commercial rafting company,
astronomy, and he was a guide for an 8-day rafting trip along the Colorado River in the Grand Canyon. While standing near a cliff, Morgan spoke with the lead rafting guide and mentioned something about taking some time off that afternoon. The lead guide was pulled away by a client during this conversation and walked away from the cliff to speak with them. When the guide looked back to the direction that Morgan was standing, he was gone. Now the guide just assumed that Morgan had taken a break and would be back, but Morgan was never seen again. During the afternoon and into the evening, Morgan never showed up for the group's activities. A member of the group then reported Morgan missing that same day. Park rangers and search and rescue teams thoroughly searched the river and surrounding areas. The search lasted for 6 days before it was assumed that Morgan must have drowned. Now his body has never turned up, and there was no trace that he was still alive after June 2nd, 2015. Number 6. Chiricahua National Monument. On January 13th, 1980, Ranger Paul Fugate disappeared from what should have been a routine hike in Arizona's Chiricahua National Monument. Paul, who was last seen heading out to do a trail check around 2 p.m., told a coworker that they could start closing duties without him if he wasn't back by 4:30 p.m. He was then seen starting down the trailhead, and that was the last any person spoke to him or saw him. His girlfriend alerted authorities, who undertook a search for him. They first assumed that he had been a victim of an accident and was injured or stranded in the backcountry. However, as the investigation continued and no traces were found, suspicions began to arise. No trace of Paul has ever been found since that day in 1980. Now, to make things even more difficult, Chiricahua has 17 square miles of canyons, treacherous terrain, and wildlands. Now, the search and rescue teams found absolutely nothing related to the park ranger.
In our number 5 spot today, we have the Challenger Deep. The Challenger Deep is the deepest known point in our ocean, around 10,900 meters deep. It is located in the Pacific Ocean in the southern part of the Mariana Trench, and because of its location, lack of light, and immense pressure, it hasn't been explored very much. The extreme environment is certainly set up for there to be a whole host of species that we know absolutely nothing about, but it is not an area that can be easily explored by humans. The Challenger Deep has only been visited 4 times, and only for short periods of time, so there is so much more that is waiting to be uncovered at this deep, dark part of our ocean. And I don't know about you, but I feel like there are crazy amounts of ocean creatures that could fully be aliens. They are so strange and interesting and unique. So who in the world knows what really lurks down there? In our number 4 spot today, we have East Scotia Ridge. In the Southern Ocean, about 2,400 meters down, you'll find this biological community or habitat that was discovered in 2012. East Scotia Ridge is a remote underwater mountain range located between South Georgia Island and the Antarctic Peninsula. The ridge is known for its unique and very mysterious geology, as well as its diverse marine life and harsh environment. It is dark down there, but it is also hot as it is being warmed by hydrothermal vents, and it can reach temperatures up to 382 degrees Celsius, which is absolutely insane. Because of this dark, hot environment, of course, we are going to find a whole bunch of new species that were previously unknown to us. Some of these species include a new kind of albino octopus, and also albino hairy lobster that's referred to as a yeti lobster, and apparently even a crab that uses its hair to grow a bacteria that detoxifies the water. Okay? Parallel universe, that's what I'm saying. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Paris Catacombs. The catacombs in Paris are some of the most famous in the world. This is a place that holds the remains of more than 6 million people, and it's also the source of an insane amount of urban spooky legends. This ossuary was created originally in an effort to eliminate the overflowing of the city's cemeteries. To be honest, this place, after being built, was mostly forgotten, but during the 19th century it became a novelty place for concerts and private events, which is certainly macabre. After some renovations and construction, they became open to the public in 1874, and they have been the source of much mystery ever since. These catacombs are expansive, with most of them being blocked off to the public, which begs the question, why? In 2009, there is said to have been a video camera discovered inside the catacombs with footage that showed an unidentified man dropping the camera in fear of something that's also unidentified before running away into complete darkness. I'm just saying, although the catacombs sees a ton of visitors every year, I'm not convinced that we know all of what's going on down there. And I don't want to know. keep your secrets. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Mobile Cave. This cave is located in Romania, just a few kilometers from the coast of the Black Sea, and it was first discovered in 1986. This cave has been isolated from the outside world for millions of years, and basically everything that goes on inside of it is different than what we are used to. The cave life is not based on photosynthesis and rather chemosynthesis. The level of oxygen in the cave is around a third of what is normally found in the atmosphere, and of the 48 species found in the cave, 33 of them were endemic to just the cave. This cave looks absolutely terrifying, but thank goodness for the brave scientists who don't let that get in the way, because as scary as it looks, it is just as, if not more amazing to be able to hear about what exactly this cave holds. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Zhangjiajie National Forest Park. This stunning nature reserve is located in the Hunan province of China, and it spans over 11,000 hectares and is known for its towering sandstone pillars and breathtaking natural scenery. The park is characterized by its unique and otherworldly landscapes, which includes thousands of the tall sandstone pillars that rise up from the ground. The pillars are often shrouded in mist, creating a very mystical and surreal atmosphere. Visitors can explore the park's many hiking trails, which wind through dense forests and lead to stunning lookout points, including the famous Avatar Hallelujah Mountain that inspired the scenery in the film Avatar. You too can visit Pandora right here on Earth. The area is also home to a diverse range of flora and fauna, including many rare and endangered species. Aside from the natural, this is also a spot rich in history, as it was once the home to many ancient temples and shrines located within the park. The area has been inhabited for over 3,000 years, and visitors can explore many historic sites and learn about the region's rich cultural heritage. Overall, this national forest park is a truly spectacular destination that combines natural beauty, cultural history, and a sense of awe and wonder that is sure to leave visitors feeling as though they went to another world. Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot, we have the Hoia Baciu Forest. This dense woodland is located in the heart of Transylvania, Romania, which, as I'm sure you're well aware, already has quite the reputation for eerie and spooky things. The forest covers an area of approximately 250 hectares and is known for its unusual and unexplained occurrences, earning it the nickname the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania. How convenient. The forest is known for its twisted and gnarled trees, which create a very haunting atmosphere, as well as the strange circular patches of land that dot the area known as Hoia, which some believe to be the result of UFO activity. The forest has also been the site of many alleged paranormal events, including ghost sightings, unexplained lights and sounds, and even disappearances, which is exactly why many believe it is a portal to another world. Some visitors to the forest who didn't disappear have even reported rashes, nausea, and feelings of anxiety afterwards. Despite its eerie reputation, the forest is also a place of immense natural beauty with a diverse range of flora and fauna. The forest is home to many rare and endangered species of plants and animals, including several species of orchids and woodpeckers. The forest is also rich in its history, as it is said it was once the site of a medieval fortress and was an important location during the Second World War. The area is also steeped in local folklore and legends, with stories of supernatural beings and witches who are said to dwell in the forest. All in all, this place is jam-packed with spooky stories, strange occurrences, and beautiful but haunting scenery. All the things that make it the perfect place to enter another world. In our number 9 spot today, we have the real Bermuda Triangle, not the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania. The Bermuda Triangle is really just the mecca when it comes to mysterious disappearances and rumors and urban legends, so of course it had to make it onto this list today. The triangle, which sits in between Florida, Puerto Rico, and Bermuda, earned its deadly reputation starting back in the 1970s. Since then, there has been about 80 aircrafts and 60 boats that have gone missing in the triangle, which only fueled rumors that there was some sort of force or supernatural cause that was making this area one where people would often go missing. There have been intense electrical forces and tunnel-like clouds reported in the triangle, which some may believe is the cause of the disappearances. Some others believe it's weather patterns. Some believe it's the entrance to a parallel universe or a place where aliens like to abduct their victims, and some people just like to dismiss the idea that there's any sort of mystery at all. At this point, exactly what is going on with the Bermuda Triangle remains a mystery. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Oregon Vortex. Just off of Interstate 5 in southern Oregon lies what is called the Oregon Vortex. According to local legend, it is said that this area and the strange and mysterious stories surrounding it aren't just modern legends, but perhaps it stems stems back further. People have said that the stories of the Oregon vortex actually stem back to when indigenous Americans referred to it as the Forbidden Land. It is said that during these times, people traveling on horses would often find their horses refusing to go into the area. So clearly, something strange was going on in there that was spooking these animals right out. Scientists have speculated that the land might contain some kind of crossed magnetic lines that produce basically like a force field, but whatever it really is, the place is truly strange. Things appear very differently here. It's sort of like everything is an optical illusion. The area is basically a parallel universe in itself. In our number 7 spot today, we have Socotra Island. Socotra Island is a remote island located in the Arabian Sea, about 240 kilometers east of the Horn of Africa and 380 kilometers south of the Arabian Peninsula, and it has been described as, quote, the most alien-looking place on Earth. It is a part of Yemen and is known for its unique and otherworldly qualities, as well as its rare and endemic plant and animal species. In fact, so many species here are endemic that up to a third of its plant life isn't found anywhere else on Earth. The landscape of Socotra is strikingly surreal, with towering limestone cliffs, deep caves, and white sand beaches. The island is home to unusual rock formations and the infamous dragon blood trees. This strange-looking umbrella-shaped tree have a red sap inside of them, which is thought to be the dragon's blood of the ancients. In addition to its natural wonders, Socotra has a rich cultural heritage with a mix of African, Arabian, and South Asian influences. The island's inhabitants, the Socotri people, have a unique language and a way of life that has been preserved for centuries. Overall, this island is just truly otherworldly, and it offers a glimpse into a world unlike any other, with the island's landscape being compared to that of a science fiction movie set. In our number 6 spot today, we have Salar de Uyuni. Salar de Uyuni is the world's largest salt flat, located in the southwest of Bolivia near the crest of the Andes. The area spans over 10,000 square kilometers and is characterized by a stunning otherworldly landscape. This peculiar place was formed by the evaporation of a prehistoric lake, leaving behind a thick layer of salt crust that stretches as far as the eye can see. During the rainy season, the salt flat becomes a giant mirror reflecting the sky and clouds in a breathtaking spectacle. It is truly unbelievable. It looks completely fake and is somehow super real. The unique terrain and climate of the area has also given rise to many unusual natural formations. The flat is dotted with small islands of rock and gigantic cacti, which serve as a haven for a variety of animal species. Yes, I said giant cacti. While this place is mostly devoid of life, plant or animal, that is save for these cacti that can grow to be 12 meters or 39 feet tall. The area is also home to many active geysers and hot springs, as well as colorful lakes that are filled with flamingos during certain times of the year. In fact, in November, this place becomes a feeding ground for 3 South American species of flamingo feeding on local brine shrimps. These are the Chilean, Andean, and rare James flamingos. Aside from its natural wonders, Salar de Uyuni is also rich in cultural history. The area has been inhabited by the indigenous Aymara people for thousands of years, and they have maintained their traditional way of life and culture to this day.
Next up, we have Gibtown, which was once the go-to retirement town of choice for old carnival workers and was nicknamed the last sideshow town in America. The place was like a carnival on steroids, 365 days a year. There were sword swallowers, Siamese twins, tall men, strong men, fire eaters, bearded ladies, and so much more. The town featured a post office with extra low counters and a beer hall with extra large chairs to accommodate its wide range of residents. At one time, 14,900 people lived in the town, which was also home to 3 factories built to manufacture Ferris wheels and carousels. Fitting. The town followed a strict Carney code and subscribed to the ideal of unconditional love and support for your fellow man, and retirement houses were provided to those in need. It was purposefully kept secret from the public as it was a safe haven for those who decided to call the town home. Today, the town is pretty much abandoned by its former residents, but its history remains incredibly fascinating and thus has earned itself a spot on today's list. And finally, we have San Luis Obispo. Not necessarily the entire town, but definitely part of it. That part being Bubblegum Alley, which honestly is one of the most disgusting things I have ever seen ever. It's literally just an alley covered in discarded chewing gum. And for some reason, people go there on purpose. The alley is 70 feet long and 15 feet tall on either side, and it is also the world's largest collection of used bubblegum. And it is also a giant health hazard and some kind of massive outbreak just waiting to happen. It looks so gross, and looking at it makes me feel gross. But hey, if I had to, you have to. If you've been here before, let me know down below in the comments, but honestly, I really hope you haven't, because ew. Starting off our list today with the Republic of Molossia, a 1.3-acre micronation near Daytona in Nevada. While this micronation, brought to life by the mind of Kevin Baugh, does claim sovereignty, it has yet to receive recognition from any of the 193 member states of the United Nations. Why is that? Well, because the Republic of Molossia is not actually real. Well, I mean, it is real, but in the sense that it exists, not in the sense that it's recognized as its own state with the authority to govern itself. The unrecognized town, or state if you're Kevin Baugh, is based off of the movie The Mouse That Roared, as well as Baugh's time serving in the military. The national drink of Molossia is called the Molossalini, and it's a non-alcoholic mixture of Sprite, grenadine, and pineapple juice with a garnish of cherries, banana slices, and pineapple. As for the town's currency, it's Valora, the currency issued by the Bank of Molossia. It comes in coins of 1, 5, 10, and 30 with an exchange rate to US dollars of 80 cents per 1 Valora dollar. Pillsbury chocolate chip cookie dough, however, is worth 5 Valora, so do with that information what you will. This town is truly a fever dream. Next up, we've got Green Bank, West Virginia, the no-tech town that is definitely not watching this video right now because, well, they have no tech. Green Bank is a national radio quiet zone, meaning that anything that puts out radio frequencies such as radios, television, computers, broadcasting, mobile phones, microwaves, and pretty much all other electronics are strictly banned from the town. Not only is this a very real law, the enforcement of the law is very real as well. The town has something called radio police, who go around using specialized equipment to detect signals coming from unauthorized electronics. They seriously aren't messing around. Now, if you're wondering what possible reason could there be for this town's strict silent nature, the answer is actually quite simple. Green Bank is home to the Green Bank Telescope, the world's largest fully steerable telescope designed to listen in on radio waves originating from space. Any interference on the ground whatsoever would render it practically useless. Imagine a world in which we bow our heads away from technology in allegiance to a telescope. Or, you know, just go to Green Bank and you don't have to imagine. Next up, we have Tangier, Virginia, located on Tangier Island in the Chesapeake Bay and home to a whopping 463 people, according to a census conducted in 2020. The town, or island if you want to get technical, has been shrinking since the year 1850, and I don't mean just population-wise, I'm talking about land mass as well, which of course directly correlates to a decrease in population, but that's besides the point. It is likely that eventually one day this little island town will need to be abandoned, and that after that the land will disappear altogether. Some of the island's more notable quirks, other than its small population and the fact that it's literally disappearing, are the fact that there is absolutely no alcohol allowed. There is no phone service, and there is only one grocery store. There are surprisingly 2 restaurants, and the residents use golf carts as their primary mode of transportation. Also, for some reason, the residents of this town, located smack dab in the middle of Virginia, USA, speak with a thick Old English accent for some odd reason. Next up, a town with a population of 3 people. Gross. I mean, it must be gross. Gross, Nebraska, that is. There's not much more interesting about this town other than the fact that it's pretty much a ghost town, save the 3 people living there as confirmed by the 2020 census, which I'm sure took days to complete. Of course, this wasn't always the case. At one point in 2010, there were a total of 2 people living in the town. So actually less, under one roof, of course. Take it back even further to 2000, and there was a whopping 5 people living in the town under one roof. A married couple and their children, all under the age of 18. Based purely off of the census readings, I'm gonna go ahead and venture a guess that as soon as they could, the kids moved out. And left the town. I don't blame them. Next up, Solvang, California, aka the Danish capital of America. Basically, this town is the Europe of California. The town resides in the Santa Ynez Valley, and stepping into it is like stepping into a world where Europe is warm and just 1 hour away from the California surf. The town originated in 1804 and is, of course, home to a large Danish population. There is a classic folk school in the town that emphasizes lectures, singing, gymnastics, folk dancing, and fellowship. And there's a Danish 14th century Gothic style church. The architecture in the rest of the town is also incredibly Danish and incredibly beautiful. And the best part is, unlike in Denmark, Solvang is practically always warm and sunny. It's truly the best of both worlds, and I imagine the food there is delicious. Next up, forget Sin City. It's Slab City, located in California, USA. Originally, the area was used as a training camp for Marine Corps during World War II. Today, however, the town is the grounds of an alternative lifestyle town that has attracted people from all over the world. The name Slab City comes from the concrete slabs that remain in the area after the Marine training camp was torn down. And the reason it's on this list is because the town is just a bit different from what you and I are likely used to. First of all, the most common source of income in the town is ISS checks, which is just government subsidized income. The main source of electricity is solar panels, and the main form of entertainment is probably just hanging around. There are also some pretty cool art installations around the town, so if you're ever in Cali and you want to get off the grid or step into what might just feel like a parallel universe, go ahead and check it out. And if you've been there before, let me know how it was. Next up, we have the incredibly appropriately named Soda Springs in Idaho, home to hundreds of natural springs, but not just regular natural springs, cool natural springs, because they are free-flowing with carbonated water. Talk about bougie. A dip in a Soda Springs spring would feel like bathing in Perrier. Like in this town, when people say sparkling or still, they aren't actually referring to drinking water, but rather their bodies of water. How cool is that? There is one other thing about the town that I think is worth mentioning, and that is their soda water geyser. Yeah, not only does carbonated water flow through the many springs of the appropriately named town, it also shoots 70 feet up into the air every hour, on the hour, every day. Always. And I'll tell you why. In 1973, while drilling for hot water, residents of the town accidentally drilled into a chamber of a highly pressurized carbon dioxide. Instead of hot water, they got cold, fully carbonated water spewing 70 feet into the air. Eventually, after weeks of the geyser continuously going and subsequently flooding the town, it was capped, making it the world's only capped geyser. As I mentioned, the cap is open every hour on the hour, so as long as you're in the town for more than 60 minutes, you'll get to tell your friends that you saw the OG soda stream. Next up, we have Casey, Illinois, home to a lot of big things for some reason. By that I mean the town is filled with giant, supersized roadside attractions, including these big antlers, this big anvil, a big bat, a big bird cage, a rather large bookworm, a big cactus, a big crochet hook, a massive ear of corn, a big old glider plane, a giant horseshoe, oversized knitting needles, to say the least, a giant mousetrap, a big old nail puzzle, a big pencil, big piggy bank, a big pizza slicer, a giant rocking horse, a big spinning top, a large wooden token, a big yardstick, and of course my personal favorite, a big taco. That's a big list.
In our number 5 spot today, we have the White Sands National Park. Another place in New Mexico, because honestly, New Mexico is definitely a home to many unusual things, and the White Sands National Park is no exception, but it is unbelievable. This national park is a stunning destination due to its unique and surreal appearance. The park features a vast expanse of white sand dunes, which are composed of gypsum crystals and form an otherworldly landscape that feels almost alien. Visitors to the park are immediately struck by the contrast between the bright white sand and the vivid blue sky, which creates a very surreal and almost dreamlike atmosphere. The dunes themselves are constantly shifting and changing, creating a landscape that seems to be in a constant state of flux. The unique beauty of the White Sands National Park has led many to describe it as a portal to another world, or a place that exists in another universe. Whether or not that is true, true, there's no denying that this park is stunning and unforgettable and a destination that should be on every traveler's bucket list. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Danakil Depression. The Danakil Depression is a part of the Afar Triangle in Ethiopia, and it is a geological depression that came about as a result of Africa and Asia moving apart. The divergence of 3 tectonic plates caused rifting and volcanic activity. This place is the hottest place on Earth in terms of average year-round temperatures, and it is also one of the lowest places on Earth at 100 meters below sea level. There are active volcanoes in the area, there are salt springs, sulfur springs, and it only gets about 4 to 8 inches of rain every year. What I'm saying is that this place is stunning and has an incredibly rich geological history, and it also fully looks like it could be from another planet. This otherworldly landscape and quite inhospitable environment is the home to the Afar people. Somehow they have managed to overcome the odds and the obstacles and managed to thrive in this extreme environment, and it is said that this was made possible over the centuries by their ability to adapt to need less food and water than other humans. That's one of the most remarkable things I've ever heard. The Danakil Depression is a popular destination for adventurous travelers who are seeking an experience that is truly out of this world. Visitors can explore the area on foot or by camel, taking in the breathtaking views of the alien-like landscape. Despite the harsh conditions, the area is also home to a number of fascinating animals and plants that have adapted to this unique environment. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Pyramids of Giza. One of the most mysterious places on Earth has to be the Pyramids of Giza. I mean, how? For centuries, people have wondered and tried to find answers as to how they were built at all, let alone with the limited resources and without the use of modern technology. And they've been around for the last 4,000 years, so the durability alone is outstanding. This alone is the source of much mystery, but that's only the outside of them. What lies on the inside might just be even more so. The Pyramids of Giza, especially the Great Pyramid of Giza, were believed to have been built as tombs for rulers and other wealthy people. That totally makes sense, except for the fact that there hasn't been any mummies found inside of them. Instead, there's just a plethora of secret, unexplored rooms, hidden doors and mirrors, you know, just regular ancient Egypt stuff. Many of these secret rooms remain completely unexplored over fear of damage. One more strange thing about these incredible creations is that they were built on the center of the Earth. However they did this, they aligned them perfectly with Orion's belt, with no technology. Just pure brilliance. I'm saying, if anywhere is going to take you to a parallel universe, these pyramids will take you back in time to a completely different world. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Crooked Forest. Forests are already creepy, but this one looks like it's straight out of a Tim Burton film. The Crooked Forest in Poland. There's around 400 odd-shaped pine trees near the town of Grafino. These trees are about 90 years old, and all of the trees, from the base, they immediately bend towards the north and then slowly curve back towards the sky, like other trees. Despite this odd bend, the trees are otherwise healthy. There's been so many theories as to how these trees got their bend, but none of them really stick. Some suggest it was a gravitational anomaly, but that's a little too far-fetched for me. I don't know, this isn't Interstellar. Other theories claim that there were heavy snowfalls that could weigh down the branches, which could check out, but why is it just a select amount? I've lived in Canada my entire life. We have lots of snow, and I've never seen a Sleepy Hollow tree. My favorite theory is that the farmers were trying to make the tree curved on purpose to make stronger wheels because the grain direction would make for naturally curved wheels. But again, nobody knows for sure. What are your thoughts? Do we like the wheel theory? And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the Catatumbo River. Basically, in western Venezuela, right over the Catatumbo River, there are these insane, very intense lightning storms, and it is a complete atmospheric phenomenon. This lightning occurs during 140 to 160 nights a year, 9 hours per day, and from 16 to 40 times per minute. That is absolutely insane. That is so much lightning. This place will transport you into a parallel universe where it's just lightning all the time. Another thing that's so fascinating about this lightning is that it is colorful and it doesn't produce any thunder. The lightning does change its frequency up from time to time, and at one point it stopped for a few weeks and people thought that maybe it was going to have been exhausted forever. but that thankfully changed when the lightning came back, putting it right back on our list of mysteries that we just can't quite figure out. Many people have studied the lightning, trying to figure out how exactly it has been created and what makes this phenomena what it is, but we just aren't yet quite. Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Ashislepa. This place is a remote desert area located in northwestern New Mexico that is known for its unique and otherworldly rock formations. These formations, which include hoodoos, spires, and arches, have an eerie and otherworldly quality that has led some to speculate that they could be from a parallel universe. The landscape of this location is so unusual that it almost defies belief. The rocks appear to be twisted and distorted, as if they have been shaped by some unknown force. Some of the formations look like alien beings, while others resemble ancient ruins. Despite its remote location, Ashislepa has become a popular destination for hikers, photographers, and adventurers. Many visitors report feeling as if they have stepped into another world when exploring the area, and I don't blame them. The photos truly look like they could be from another planet. Whether or not this place is truly from a parallel universe, there is no denying that its otherworldly beauty and strangeness make it a truly unique and fascinating destination. In our number 9 spot today, we have Raketsbrück. Also known as the Devil's Bridge, this structure is a unique and striking bridge located in Kromlau, Germany. The bridge was built in the 19th century and is famous for its unusual design, which makes it appear as though it could be from a parallel universe. The bridge is built in a circular shape and its arch is perfectly reflected in the water below, creating a complete circle. The effect gives the impression that the bridge is a portal to another world or dimension. The symmetry and precision of the bridge's design have led many to speculate that it was built using some kind of ancient technology or even by supernatural means. The bridge is also an important historical monument representing the engineering achievements of its time. While this place in itself doesn't necessarily look like it's from a parallel universe, the legends still persist today that suggest it might be the perfect place to enter one. In our number 8 spot today, we have Pamukkale. Located in southwestern Turkey, this place is a natural wonder that looks like it could be from a parallel universe. This unique destination is known for its stunning white terraces and thermal pools, which have been formed over thousands of years by the natural mineral deposits in the area. The terraces of Pamukkale resemble a cascading frozen waterfall with sparkling blue pools of water at the top. The contrast between the white terraces and the blue water is truly breathtaking, and the site is unlike anything else in the world. Many visitors describe the experience of walking on the terraces as otherworldly, as the sensation of walking on the soft white surface is unlike anything else that they have ever experienced, and that is exactly why this place has the nickname Cotton Castle. The surreal beauty of this place has led many to speculate that it is a portal to another world or a place that exists outside of our reality. It is believed by many that the waters here are not only strikingly beautiful, but that they also contain healing powers, which makes it a spot that sees travelers from all over the world. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Waitomo Caves. These caves are a unique and stunning attraction located in the North Island of New Zealand. The caves are known for their stunning display of glowworms, which light up the dark and seemingly endless caverns in a way that makes it seem like they could be from a parallel universe. As visitors enter the caves, they are immediately struck by the otherworldly atmosphere. The walls of the caves are adorned with glittering formations, and the silence is broken only by the gentle drip of water. The real magic of the caves, however, comes from the glowworms that inhabit them. These tiny creatures emit a blue-green light that illuminates the caverns in a way that feels almost supernatural. The experience of walking through the Waitomo glowworm caves is truly unique and unforgettable, and many visitors describe feeling as though they have stepped into another world. Whether or not the caves are actually a portal to a parallel universe, there is no denying that they are a stunning example of the natural beauty and wonder of our world. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Zhangyi Danxia landform. Located in China, this place is a stunning and unique geological feature. The landform is made up of a series of multicolored rock formations that have been shaped by millions of years of natural erosion and deposition. The colors of the rock formations are so vivid and intense that it's almost hard to believe that they really are natural. It fully looks like a man-made creation, despite that not being the case at all. The layers of sandstones, silt siltstone and mudstone that make up the landform have been exposed to the elements for millions of years, resulting in a surreal and alien-like landscape. Visitors to the area can explore it on foot or by car, taking in the breathtaking views of the colorful mountains and valleys. The unique beauty of the landform has made it a very popular destination for tourists, and of course for photographers from around the world who come to experience this otherworldly landscape for themselves.
From a now deleted Reddit user comes an odd encounter at a gas station. Back in 2016, I was driving home late at night after visiting a friend. It was a route I knew well, just a long stretch of highway with barely any traffic at that hour. About halfway home, I noticed a gas station up ahead. The thing is, I didn't remember ever seeing one there before. It didn't look new either, it looked old, like straight out of the 80s. Flickering neon lights, a beat up old truck parked out front. It even had an old school gas pump. Well, I needed gas anyway, so I pulled in. Plus, there was just no way I wasn't checking this place out. The moment I stepped out of my car, everything felt off. Inside, there was an old man behind the counter staring at a tiny TV. I asked if they took cards, but he just shook his head. Cash only. I didn't have cash, so I turned around to leave. As soon as I made it back to my car, it struck me just how weird this situation was. An old gas station that I'd never seen before along a stretch of road I'd driven down plenty of times that apparently only took cash. I shuddered a little and then drove home and tried not to think about the experience before writing it down today. Honestly, I still don't know where I stopped that night or maybe even when. In 1975, Travis Walton and his logging crew were driving home after a long day working in the Apache Site-Greaves National Forest when they spotted something very bizarre. A glowing red light hovering over the trees. As they got closer, they saw what looked like a metallic craft suspended in midair. Most people would hit the gas and get out of there, but Walton had other ideas. Ignoring his crew's warnings, he got out of the truck and walked toward it. And that's when a beam of light shot down from the craft, knocking him off his feet, lifting him into the air. That was enough for the rest of the crew. They panicked and sped off. Guilt quickly set in though, and they decided to turn back. But when they returned a few minutes later, Walton was gone. A massive search followed, but no sign of Walton turned up for 5 days. Suddenly though, he reappeared. Confused and disoriented, he ended up telling everyone eventually that he'd been taken aboard a UFO, where he encountered strange beings that seemed to be experimenting on him. He claimed he managed to fight them off and escape deeper into the ship before waking up on the side of the road with no idea how much time had passed. The case became one of the most well-documented alien abduction stories in history, probably, especially since Walton and his crew all passed multiple polygraph tests. This next case, often referred to as the friendship case, might not fit the typical missing person story, but it's got a weird, unsettling angle that connects to the idea of people vanishing, at least temporarily, and coming back with some pretty wild stories. It's not going to go where you think it's going to go. So, during a stretch of time between the 1950s and 60s, a group of people in Italy claimed that they were regularly in contact with extraterrestrial beings. They were supposedly peaceful, highly advanced, and deeply invested in guiding humanity toward a better future. According to those involved, the aliens would take them to hidden bases on Earth, sharing advanced knowledge about science and spirituality, and the importance of unity. Some claim to have spent significant time with these beings, and as if this whole thing wasn't strange enough, some believe that in the course of these interactions, a few of the humans may have gotten a little too close to their extraterrestrial friends, possibly leading to the birth of alien-human hybrids. Now, obviously, this is a pretty nutty case, no pun intended, but if this story is to be believed, we've got a situation where ordinary people vanished, at least for short periods, and were taken to who knows where. Apparently though, they came back changed. This next story comes from another now deleted Reddit user and goes as follows. In 2019, I went on a solo hiking trip in Washington. It was a well-traveled trail, nothing dangerous. I planned to camp overnight and head back the next morning. Around 1 p.m. I set up camp in a clearing, and that's when things got weird. I noticed that the forest was silent. There were no birds to be heard, no wind, just this heavy stillness. The sky had also changed. It wasn't dark, but the light had this washed out grayish tint. I was uneasy at this point, but decided it just wasn't enough to get too freaked out about. Maybe a storm was coming. Well, then about an hour later, I heard the voices, muffled like a bad recording of human speech. I stuck my head out of my tent expecting to see someone, but the clearing was empty. Now, I must have fallen asleep soon after this because I don't remember much after that. But when I woke up, the clearing looked different. Trees seemed taller, the air was heavy. At this point, I was just freaked out and decided it was time to head home. Thing is, the trail was missing, at least I couldn't find it. I walked for hours in the direction I'd come, but I never seemed to get anywhere. It was actually getting dark now. Finally, I made it out though and reached my car. I checked the time, and that's when I lost it. Less than 2 hours had passed? This was impossible. I could have sworn I was out there for 5 hours. Well, I haven't gone down that trail since, and I never will again. In August of 1976, 4 friends set out for a camping trip in the Allagash Wilderness in Maine, hoping for some peaceful time away. But things took a strange turn when they spotted a bright light in the sky on their second night, which then quickly disappeared. 2 nights later, the same light appeared again, only this time it was much more intense. In fact, they described it looking almost like the sun. As they watched, it followed them along the water. One of the men, Charlie, tried to signal SOS using his flashlight, and that's when the light shot a beam toward him. When they returned to camp, everything felt off. The fire they'd left burning was out, and they were completely drained as if hours had passed. Days went by without any other strange sightings, but when the men got home, they began having these unsettling dreams, all of them similar and terrifying. It wasn't until 1988 that they finally sought help from UFO researcher Ray Fowler and decided to undergo hypnosis. Under hypnosis, they all recalled being abducted by aliens, terrifying creatures who performed medical exams on them and even took their skin and bodily fluids. What was most chilling was that each of their stories matched almost perfectly, and they even passed polygraph tests.
From a man disappearing mid-step in front of multiple witnesses, to a woman driving straight into a warped version of her hometown, and a college student who woke up 700 miles from where he went missing with no memory of how he got there. These are disturbing cases of people who vanished and returned from another reality.